I'm Helen Farmer. On today's Eye on Education, brought to you by Cognita Schools, we are marking Anti-Bullying Week. We were chatting to a child psychologist, an assistant principal and a school counsellor about how parents, pupils and teachers work together to tackle this issue. Plus, as we were broadcasting live from Jumeirah Golf Estates, what role does sports have on making sure everyone feels included?
This is Eye on Education on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
With Cognita Schools.
We are marking Anti-Bullying Week. A topic that I think I'd be a rare person listening today that hasn't been affected by bullying in some shape or form, whether it was you as a child, maybe it's your own child, or perhaps even in the workplace. We are talking children, of course, between now and 5. And joining us now from Medcare Kamali Medical Centre, we are delighted to speak to Carolyn Yaffe. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for being with us today. How are you?
Thank you, Helen. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm well. I think a lot of people find the word bullying quite confrontational, quite a difficult thing to think about, because as parents, we want to rush in and protect our children. You know, we want to take the pain away. And we're going to be talking about what's happening in schools in an hour's time. But for you as a psychotherapist, I think it's really important, if you don't mind, to talk about what we're talking about when we say that word, bullying. How do you define it? And do you feel like that definition has changed?
I'll just explain a little bit about the definition of bullying and that there are different types of bullying. First, there is physical bullying, which includes hitting or breaking another young person's possession. There's verbal bullying, which is name calling, or writing down negative things about somebody, name calling, and social bullying, which is harming somebody's reputation or not including them in group activities and, isolating another young person, and cyberbullying, which is sending mean texts and images and hacking into phones or social media. And I just want to say one thing about cyberbullying is that it is increasingly more common. It is becoming the most common form of bullying, as it's easier to do anonymously. And reason being is because the perpetrators, first of all, they don't have to experience the reaction of the child that they are bullying. They often can't see the damage that they're doing, and it can be easier to hide.
And there's no escape from it either. Back in my day, if there was trouble in the schoolyard, it stayed in the schoolyard. And now, we have these computers in our pocket and we pick up those phones to speak to our friends and family. And it's intrusive when you're confronted by something that's negative and harmful. It's right there.
Well, the cyberbullying, and it's interesting that you said that because, I didn't grow up when I was a child. There was no internet. There was no social media. So no matter what was going on at school, if you left school at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, whatever was there, you left there. At least you had some respite from it. Today, the cyberbullying, it is a 24-hour cycle, and it just follows you everywhere.
Carolyn, can I ask you about, when we think about definition, we're not talking about one-off incidents. We're talking about sustained patterns of behaviour. What kind of psychological impact can that have on a child?
Well, children who experience bullying, they do have a higher rate of depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, sleep problems. Over time, the, harassment is so traumatic. It can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal thoughts, retribution or violence, and self-harming.
Gosh. We're going to be talking next about some of the signs that your child might be being bullied, or perhaps even some of those hidden signs that parents need to be clued into. And we are going to be talking about the roles of schools, of course, after 4 o'clock today. If you do want to get in touch and share your thoughts, you are more than welcome to reach out. Message here from Elle saying, I got bullied every day at school, cried almost every day on the way home, hiding from kids. I wish my parents and teachers had done something. I felt lost, helpless, and not welcome anywhere. If I asked for help, they just repeatedly said, you need to be more quick-witted. But how? You don't become quick-witted overnight. From an introvert to an extrovert. I wish parents and schools would teach the impact of bullying in people. I still struggle with social anxiety from the mental and physical abuse. And there are many people who have suicidal thoughts because of bullying. Thank you for bringing more awareness to it.
This is Eye on Education on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
With Cognita Schools.
Joining us live on the line, delighted to be in conversation with psychotherapist Carolyn Yaffe, speaking to us from Medcare Kamali Mental Health Clinic. Carolyn, we've had a number of messages that I want to turn your attention to, including this no name, and you can always, of course, get in touch completely anonymously, saying, I was bullied at school, I had no friends, never got over it as there was an awareness about it 25 years ago. That PTSD stayed with me until now, and I've got crippling social anxiety most days. How can we target the issues in people that were bullied but never sought help? Carolyn, is it ever too late to start to heal from what can be truly traumatic experiences as a child?
No, it's definitely never too late. And I think that if somebody finds themselves struggling with social anxiety, low self-esteem, post-traumatic stress disorder, stemming from any time in their life, I mean, of course, it's never too late to seek help, because our past is our present.
Can I ask what that help could look like? Are there any, PTSD therapies that you found to be useful? I know EMDR has been proven time and time again. Is that what kind of techniques or recommendations would you have for this listener?
For people that have post-traumatic stress disorder, I will often use trauma-based cognitive behavioral therapy. I also do EMDR as well, which I think is very, very effective for any kind of trauma, childhood trauma. But I also think that CBT in and of itself can really help people manage thoughts of social anxiety, because really, basically, we have these beliefs about ourselves, and often the beliefs that we have about ourselves come from experiences in our past, and we can certainly work through that in a therapeutic manner.
Carolyn, I wanted to play you this from Mum Hannah that's been in touch.
My name is Hannah, and I am mum to a lovely little boy who is autistic. I wanted to share a quick message on the topic of bullying. According to a recent survey carried out by Ambitious About Autism, 75% of autistic young people have experienced bullying behaviour and didn't feel safe at school. Children with autism have a different and unique kind of brain that changes how they see, perceive, process and respond to the world. Autism is also a vast spectrum, and so each autistic child you meet is different. Please take the time to explain to your child that if they meet an autistic child in the park or at school who's acting differently, it is bullying to call them weird. This could be flapping or spinning. It may be that the child doesn't talk yet or respond. It could be that they tell you 100 facts about oceans or the world map before they ask your name. Explaining that calling another child weird because they are different might be harmless to you, but very helpful to the other child. It can make them anxious, not want to sleep, lose their appetite, not want to come to school anymore. To your child, it might be a passing comment they forgot they even made, and yet for our children, it can stay with them for a lifetime and permanently damage their confidence. My son asked me in year 1 what weird was and why everyone used it to describe him. It crushed him as he realised he was always being pushed out, pushed away, not invited, not asked to play, and I felt heartbroken that school, which should be a joyful place of learning, was stealing the sparkle out of my son. This one word, weird, can swirl around in their mind and make them feel like they do not belong at school or in the park or anywhere but home. We must teach that what we say to other children matters. And standing up if you hear another child say something mean matters too. It is not enough to just be kind, but we must teach our children to have the courage to speak up when others are unkind too. I think it starts with us as parents giving our children a good understanding of autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and all the disabilities and learning differences. I think this can empower them to be more compassionate, inclusive, and understanding when they meet a child who is different to them. Strong people stand up for themselves, but the strongest people stand up for others.
So well said, Hannah. Thank you so much. Real food for thought as parents there in terms of the role that we play in conversations that happen in the home and outside of the home as well. We are going to be speaking to a school counsellor and assistant principal after 4:00. But Carolyn, can I ask you about where to get help? If you're worried that your child is being bullied, they've come to you as a trusted adult and told you what's happened, or perhaps even you've learned that your child is a perpetrator. What do you recommend in terms of next steps as therapy for children?
Well, can I just say that, this is where that woman's, that was a very, very sad email that you received. And, that's where that woman was absolutely right in the sense that it does start with the parents. It is incredibly important for parents to have difficult conversations with their children about other children who may be different, and that it's important for your children to understand that their actions can't have life-altering consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And, from the two situations that you had previously spoke about, I mean, these are life-altering situations that have followed these individuals into adulthood. So it's extremely important that parents have those conversations and teach empathy to your child. And, and if your child is being bullied, explain to them that, sometimes bullies act out because they themselves are having low self-esteem or they don't understand. But this is not to excuse these actions, but to really help them understand why it may be happening, and that it's not happening because there is something wrong with them. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to not only teach empathy, but also to teach confidence, and if your child is the bully, have that conversation with them and help them to understand, because they may not understand the impact that they are having on another child. And often what happens when children are being bullied, it's like, you have the whole bystander thing, and, they have an audience and they can think they're being funny. They may not even realize that they're doing the damage that they're doing. So it really is up to the parents and to the schools, for the schools and the teachers, to convey those messages and educate the children. And there's lots of different ways to do that.
I think I think you've spoken to a really interesting point there in terms of the shame that a lot of people carry through life if they have been bullied, that self-blame, that it's my fault, I deserved it. And that's right. Absolutely never the case. Carolyn, are there any resources that we could point parents to, whether it is books or YouTube videos, podcasts, conversations online, that could be really useful for having some very difficult conversations with our children on this topic?
There are a lot of resources online. In fact, I actually found something called DoSomething.org, which I really don't know much about this website, but in doing research, I just happened to come across it. It is a website to help parents and children do something and how to get the help that they need. I think the first thing to do is, if your child is being bullied by another child, try to talk to the parents. Again, it's very important for the parents to be educating their children on what is going on, what the child is doing, and the adverse effects that their behaviors can have.
Thank you, Carolyn. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but we are going to be continuing this conversation around what happens in schools with both a school counsellor and assistant principal after 4 o'clock. In the meantime, Carolyn Yaffe speaking to us from Kamali Clinic. Really, really appreciate your time and your insights. And from a mum's point of view, there's a book that we have that I think is lovely. It's called The Invisible Boy by Trudy Ludwig, and it's a great way of starting that conversation with really little kids, that kind of 3, 4, 5 age group. The Invisible Boy would be mine.
This is Eye on Education on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
With Cognita Schools.
We are broadcasting live from day one of the DP World Tour Championship. And it is, of course, all things sport. So we wanted to bring in an industry insider, a man in the know, to talk about how sport in school has changed since I was there a few years ago. It's James Bennett, the Director of Sport at the Royal Grammar School, Guildford, Dubai. How are you, Mr. Bennett?
I'm very well, thanks, Helen. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. Now, I feel like sometimes PE teachers are the ones that are the most either loved or sometimes the scary ones, depending on how sporty you are as a kid. I can tell you, it was Mr. Graham who used to make us do cross-country running through cowpats in rural Northumberland, and I've never forgiven him to this day. What were your own school days like on the sports field?
Very similar. Mr. Rennick.
See?
Shouting, "Come on, Bennett, hurry up," as I trotted my way around the cross-country course. and similar in the swimming pool. So yeah, pretty scary, although had that air of respect. And I look back actually, and I think on the whole, really enjoyed my sports experiences, which is probably why I'm here now.
Well, they can be so formative. Sometimes, what that teacher's saying on the sidelines, or the parents, or even what you're hearing from your schoolmates, can really inform if you go through life feeling like you are a sporty person, good at sport. And I think it's actually really important to acknowledge that everybody is capable in some ways and some forms. And sometimes, it takes to me in my 40s to only recently found what I really enjoy doing, how I enjoy moving, and that, exercising is a privilege rather than a punishment. Tell us a little bit about the role that sports plays in the curriculum with you guys. What are some of the key messages and your mission with it?
Yeah, so I think, RGS Guildford Dubai, very similar to RGS UK, where I was lucky enough to work previously. As I said to parents the other day, we're trying to give all children a buzz about sport. We don't want them walking into the sports hall or the swimming pool or out on the sports field dreading sport. We want, regardless of ability or knowledge, just for them to think, wow, it's sport today, and I want to enjoy it. That's effectively what we're doing. And with that, then they're gaining the social skills, they're gaining the confidence, as a booster, they're gaining leadership skills. They're learning to persevere if they make a mistake. And I guess engagement, so to quote, as cheesy as it is, some of our values, being engaged within sport is the first building block, and that's all we really ask of our pupils, and then everything else follows from that.
I think there's a few really important conversations to unpack, and I would love to do that on future shows as well with you, Mr. Bennett. But when we think about team sports, how can you make sure that everyone feels included when you might have a range of abilities in a team or in a class? What can that look like in practice?
Yeah, so I mean, with our model, children have in primaries around 3 hours of sport a week, and that's something I'm pretty proud of within their curriculum. So they'll do PE, which is very much non-streamed, and they'll get to be in different teams, pair up with their peers, learn to collaborate. Another key word that we're trying to echo onto the children. They then do an hour and 20 minutes of games each week, which is practicing the sports that they're then able to, or will have the opportunity to try and take up representatively for the school. Mm-hmm. So, and we're trying, from the age of even year two, so I had them for football today, work with each other, try and, persevere. If you make mistakes, don't get on someone's back. Try and build those social skills that are part of a team, because we recognise that really, regardless of whether you're good at a sport or you've never played a sport before, it's a pathway, and developing those skills are valuable for the rest of your life. And it's really our job as a department to try and implement them to all abilities. So that inclusivity is huge, and it's something, to be honest, that all schools, from what that I've seen, are trying their best to do in Dubai, and something that I think the UAE is very good at implementing as well. And obviously, we're back. The Cognita Group as a whole. The 7 schools now, we're all trying to convey that same message to parents and our pupils.
Well, my kids are playing Cognita netball right now. So I think it's interesting because mine have been, I know you're not supposed to show off about your kids, but mine are both really good swimmers. They've been in the pool since they were 3 months old. And, I'm a good swimmer myself. It was really important to me. But I think thinking about team sports, it's a completely different discipline. I mean, whether, if you've got a swim gala, you go as a school, but there's something about playing on a team. And I say this as someone like my best mates now, 30 years later, are girls that I played netball with at school. Because exactly as you said, it's about winning together, about the tough times, losing together, about communication. And what you can learn about yourself through that. Have you seen some great friendships and transformations over the years?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's that remember that time when sort of thing. And we want our people to have that. As when I played in that team, we lost so-and-so, but we showed a bit of courage. We came back in the second half. We scored 2 goals. That sort of thing. We're already seeing that. And going back to our values as a school, if we look at things like courage, respect, collaboration, every single child in the school, regardless of whether they play against other schools, should still get that from a weekly lesson. They should still get. They should. Parents say, "Oh, I've got a daughter in the team did netball with Chloe today, and even that's where it starts, and then you can build from there. And as you go into key stage 3 and 4 sport and representative sport, well, whether you do or you don't, you've got that platform, that foundation. So, I mean, it's something that, again, we're trying to educate the parents as well, because I think the great thing about sport here is the recognition the recognition of PE now as a core subject. So academic staff around the school, management, Cognita as a group, RGS as a group will recognise how important, everyone recognises how important PE, games, swimming is in the weekly curriculum.
Mm-hmm. What about us as parents then? And I say this because I saw a video of my daughter swimming in a gala this week, and the overriding volume was my husband going, "Come on!" Encouraging, but maybe verging into the competitive dad. What would you wish parents listening today can do to encourage their kids? Foster that idea of a growth mindset of, training, winning, losing as a team, without maybe getting into the pushy parent territory, Mr. Bennett?
Well, it's funny you should say that. So I've gone through the whole transition now, almost the 20-year mark of teaching, of thinking, okay, was that too much? Is it too pushy? I now have a daughter. I'm already, why don't you go and do this football club? No, Dad, I'd like to do Twinkle Toes Ballet instead. And right, well, I'll go with that. It's not necessarily what I would have chosen, but if it's something that makes you passionate, and something that, it's a sport that she's enjoying week in, week out, then I'm going to go with it. And it's funny you mentioned swimming as well. I've just opted to send my little girl to the Emirates Me, like scaffolded swimming lessons, and it's purely because she's enjoying it. She's asked for that. I'd like her to go to netball. She's not ready for that yet. So I think probably the main message to parents is as long as your child is showing some sort of passion for sport, for getting out there, which in turn will develop their social skills and boost their confidence, you've just got to back it. And actually, if you see barriers, probably the thing not to do is to try and force that that they go to a club or a topic, because it can change. I see now even the children that started at RGS almost 2.5 years ago as year sixes now. They've developed, and it might be that they loved swimming. Now they're really into netball across country. I know that RGS are away, but exactly, it changes massively. So I just support it as parents.
Thank you so much. It made me laugh yesterday. We were at school early morning, and the running club was running around the field, and my 8-year-old turned. She was like, "Mummy, that looks awful." I was like, "Do you know what? You are my daughter. Let's get back in the pool." Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. And I've said we'll absolutely come back to some of the powers, the benefits of team sports, about what happens next if your child is a really skilled sports person within the school and beyond. Thank you so much, James Bennett, Director of Sport at Royal Grammar School, Guildford, Dubai.
This is Eye on Education on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
With Cognita Schools.
Eye on Education this hour with Cognita Schools. Fantastic to have you with us. And we're marking Anti-Bullying Week. Asma Ahmed is with us today, school counsellor at Horizon English School. And I think it's really important, Asma, to talk about, and we are going to be talking about kind of reacting to bullying after past with the assistant principal. But let's talk about prevention, I suppose, and fostering a culture of inclusion. Tell us a little bit about how important this is to you as a school counsellor, first of all.
Hi, Helen. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's really important, actually, to foster and cultivate kind of an environment for children to grow up in that is safe and kind, and it kind of opens up dialogue for that way to things that when they don't feel safe and when they do have concerns, that they've got people to go to and ask the questions and share concerns about things that are worrying them. I think that's really important. And proactively approaching bullying is definitely something that's really valued here at Horizon and in many schools in the region.
I think for parents as well, is that quote that if you don't listen to little things when they're little, you won't hear the big things when they're big, because it was always a big thing to them, about being able to have that, those trusted adults in a child's life. And yes, that can be a parent and a family member, but for so many kids, those trusted adults are in that school environment. Let's talk a little bit about that proactive approach to bullying. And I don't want to say proactive around bullying, sounds a bit strange, but I guess having that conversation year round, weaving into the curriculum and not making it this big discussion like today we're going to talk about bullying. What are some of the ways that you address that at school?
I think it's really important to also kind of highlight that we do place an emphasis on Anti-Bullying Week, and it just gives us another opportunity to talk about how, we can be respectful and we can be kind. But I think the main thing is throughout the year, there's an emphasis on kindness and teaching those social skills and those skills to emotionally regulate. And, it's done in various different ways. I think working in a school has kind of shown me how you can talk about emotions through the curriculum, which we do quite well over here, talking about like topics around well-being and kind of interweaving it into English lessons through books. Books are a very powerful tool, but even earlier down through play and teaching children to play and develop those social skills, I think, which play a massive part in bullying prevention. I mean, for me, I think the main ones would be empathy, those assertiveness skills and problem solving skills that are the basis of good, healthy play with children. And yes, they do develop that naturally, but as educators, it's our role to kind of emphasize how good it is and look at those teachable moments in everyday interaction.
We had a really lovely message from Mum Hannah earlier today talking about how important it is to talk to our children about differences. She was explaining just how upsetting it's been to see her son who has autism being singled out and being called weird, and why we as parents have a bit of a role and responsibility to say that, words matter. What about celebrating differences? Is that something that has been a priority through the curriculum or events, or even, I don't know, just conversations you're having in school?
Yeah, I think definitely conversations having in school, but, we love to celebrate differences here. I think inclusion is a part of the culture, and as it should be, not just any additional needs that the child has. Obviously, we celebrate Children's Mental Health Week by, doing an activity that last year we went for a walk down to the canal, and we had conversations around keeping your mental health kind of safe, and who we can approach and who we can talk about it if we're not feeling so good, but also around kind of like autism awareness. We've recently actually intervened through the curriculum Diversity Month, and we do that every year, which is, something that's really close to my heart, obviously being a woman of colour and having those role models in books that my children can kind of identify with and look up to. And that's really important, because I think without having the knowledge and the awareness of diverse groups, children, how are they supposed to navigate their way to understand how to treat each other respectfully? And I think we're very lucky in the region where we are living with people who are so diverse and come from different backgrounds, and it's about celebrating those differences and appreciating that diversity.
Couldn't agree more.
This is Eye on Education on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
With Cognita Schools.
Joining us from Horizon English School, we've got their school counsellor, Asma Ahmed, speaking to us. Asma, we just heard from Isabella there, who was saying that she was bullied as a teenager, and it was the school counsellor that stepped in and, was a real source of help and support there. Can you explain a little bit about your job and the role that you play when situations are brought to you, whether it is from a pupil, a parent or a teacher?
Yes, Helen, it's an important role because it's a supportive role as a school counsellor, and supporting children and listening to them is what they need sometimes, to have that go-to person that can look at the situation impartially and just listen to their concerns and support them. I think collectively, though, working with the parents is a key thing to deal with issues such like this, because the best defence against bullying, like I said to you, is being socially skilled and teaching the children the social skills and now allowing them to develop confidence. Now, that can happen in a classroom setting. For some children, the trauma of it, they need their safe space, and it's providing that environment and working collectively with the teachers, with the parents, to kind of come down to what it is and what changes we could make as a school to support that child individually. I mean, saying that, it's not just always working with the victim. We know children behave the way they do for a reason, and we do adopt a very restorative approach here at Horizon. So children who bully do get that support to also develop those social skills. And it's very important for them to understand the expectations and the rules around bullying and to realize how much it actually hurts. Again, like I said, empathy comes into it quite a lot. And obviously, the bystanders play a key part. And so when we're looking at this holistically, there's a number of key players that the counsellor may have to kind of interact with to kind of support the child in question who is the victim of the bullying.
Mm-hmm. I was just talking earlier with psychologist Carolyn about resources, and I mentioned a book called The Invisible Boy, which we have in our house, which is a great one, thinking about kids being excluded and what that must feel like. And there's some great videos going around Anti-Bullying Week about the toothpaste tube and explaining to children that words are like toothpaste. Once they're out, once you squeeze them out of the tube, you can't put them back in. Those words are out there and can really affect kids. Are there any resources that you think, would be useful for us as parents today, whether it is books or videos or even any analogies that you use at the school to help us have what can be some really challenging conversations?
I think we're very lucky and fortunate right now that there's a wealth of information out there on Google, and there are some brilliant websites that you can kind of tune into. We use Anti-Bullying Alliance quite a lot here for Anti-Bullying Week. Do check them out. We follow their kind of lesson plans. Every year they have a new topic to focus on. And this year it's Make Noise About Bullying and encouraging children to think about who their people are, who they can go and talk to. Year on year, we go on about our 5 Fingers of Safety network here. Who are the 5 people that children can talk to and raise their concerns for? So Anti-Bullying Alliance is a really good website for parents. There's a lot of information with tips for parents on there as well.
Thank you. What about fellow students, student leadership? I know you've got wellbeing ambassadors there at Horizon English. How important is it to have these fellow children who might be a little bit older or might be their peers who are in positions of setting examples, but also positions of trust as well?
Yeah, positive role modelling is absolutely key, whether it's parents, adults, and more so actually young people and children. I think children listen to children. Tomorrow we have our Anti-Bullying Week assembly, and that's led by our wellbeing ambassadors. We also actually have digital prefects. We know as the social life of children has moved into the internet, so has bullying, with electronic bullying becoming really significant, a new problem in the past decade. So it's about using children and speaking to children. When it comes to bullying, when it comes to trends, children know better than us. So their voice is very important on any planning of sessions that we're having. And I think that's absolutely key to kind of engage the younger children and see them as role models.
Asma, thank you so much for your time today. It's wonderful to think about. This is so much interwoven into the fabric of the school, from circle time to bringing parents in, talking about all people involved in any scenarios that might be unfolding, and really, really appreciate your time and your insights on this. Speaking to us from Horizon English, Asma Ahmed, School Counsellor.
This is Eye on Education on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
With Cognita Schools.
Joining us now from Horizon International Schools, Assistant Principal, we've got Amanda Buckley with us today as we continue our conversations around Anti-Bullying Week. It's such an interesting one, Amanda, because I feel like everyone listening today, and judging from the messages, has been affected by bullying, whether it is wanting to protect our children and wanting to go into bat for them in school, or indeed a number of messages from grown-ups listening today who were bullied in some awful situations, really badly bullied at school. Asma speaking to us from Horizon English earlier, talking about the 5 Fingers of Safety, and I wondered if you wouldn't mind going into a little bit more detail about that, because this is a really proactive thing that parents listening today can do with their kids.
Yeah, so here at Horizon International, we really focus on relationships first and foremost, and we've tried to introduce this to children in a really kind of child-friendly way, making sure that they are able to identify adults who they feel are safe spaces for them and people that they can go and talk to. We've been kind of working on that a lot this week through we call it Pro-Kindness Week here.
That's a lovely way of putting it.
Yeah, we just thought it's kind of putting a positive spin on things, as opposed to, obviously it is Anti-Bullying Week, but it links in with our values, but it's about identifying, 5 key people who they feel that they can go to if they are worried or if they are concerned. We call it their confidence crew.
That's really, I think that spin is actually really important, because we don't want to get to the point where, and listen, any school that says they don't have bullying is, in denial or lying. There's always going to be, it's part of growing up. It's part of the social dynamics of school. But, what you're speaking to there, I think, is a really important one, just fostering a culture of community and communication where it's certainly minimised because of the values that are being taught. So let's talk a little bit about some of that collective approach then, teaching about bullying with parents as well, because that must be a difficult conversation for them to hear, either that their child is being bullied or perhaps is the perpetrator.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's always a difficult conversation to have. And I think that, again, it comes back to having a really open relationship with our community and making sure that if there are any issues, they're kind of nipped in the bud early on. We have a really open door policy where if parents are worried, their first port of call is to speak to the classroom teacher. And sometimes it's about, it's not necessarily that it's got to the point of bullying, but it's identifying those concerns early on before something escalates.
Can I ask a difficult question? Are there parents, in theory, who perhaps think their little angels could never do anything wrong? And if there's ever a dynamic, then my goodness, well, it wouldn't be my child. That must be a challenging one in terms of trying to broach that as a communication topic.
Yeah, I think it's always the challenge, because nobody likes to hear, I'm a mum as well, and nobody likes to hear that their child has done something that, isn't necessarily a positive choice to make. But we do always try and think, is there a reason for that behaviour? And has something happened? Has there been a change in routine? So it's about having an open dialogue with parents rather than saying, your child has done X, Y, and Z. It's about, has there been any changes? How is your child feeling about school at the moment? Because sometimes there are, reasons for negative behaviours that we see.
Amanda, can I ask then, what about conflict resolution? If you get a concerned parent or perhaps a teacher flags it, can you talk a little bit about the processes there at Horizon International to safeguard children and ultimately resolve what can be a really tricky situation?
Yeah, I think it's about communication, isn't it? And being open to those conversations are really difficult, but it's being open to having those conversations and making sure that things are addressed head on. So taking the time to listen to parents' concerns and taking the time to listen to children as well. I think, sometimes we're all really busy and parents, children, if something's worrying them enough to come into school and talk about it, it's important to make the time to listen.
I couldn't agree more. And there's sometimes these conversations are really, really challenging. I wanted to ask you, and the same question I asked to Ahmed earlier, about resources, because I'm a firm believer that, sitting down with your child at the kitchen table to say, we are going to talk about bullying, and this is how you're not going to be a bully, and are you being bullied, are not necessarily the best ways to communicate a tricky topic. No. Are there any books or websites, videos even, that you've found to be effective when you're working with children, or indeed that we as parents could have in the toolkit as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think just going back to your point there, sometimes by having those conversations and saying, are you being bullied? It's sowing a seed then, because sometimes, not that like teasing is okay, but children will have jokes with each other back and forth, and we don't want them to jump straight into the dialogue of I'm being bullied. We love to use a book here at Horizon International called Have You Filled a Bucket Today? And it just frames it frames kindness in a really nice way for children. So it talks about everybody's got an invisible bucket, and you want to fill people's buckets with kindness. So we talk about, do you want to be a bucket filler? What random acts of kindness could you do? You don't want to be a bucket dipper, which is where you would take out of somebody's invisible bucket. So it just kind of gives them a visual to use as well.
I just want to say thank you really for kind of reframing this idea of Anti-Bullying Week in terms of pro-kindness. And I think that's a really great mind shift for everyone listening today. Amanda Buckley, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really lovely to hear what happens there at Horizon International School, where you are the assistant principal.
This is Eye on Education on Afternoons with Helen Farmer.
With Cognita Schools.